Hello, YouTube land. This is Brenton coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. If anyone has a story they would like to share here on this show, whether it be Bigfoot, Dogman, any kind of supernatural, any kind of story you think would be good that's a mystery, you can email me at brentonsawin@gmail.com. If anyone wants to contribute to help make this show, you can go to a link in the description, PayPal me, and you can make a contribution there. And thank you to everyone who has contributed. Now, today, before we get started with this guest we have, Thrunite sent another light. It's a T10, and it basically came in a pack, that little metal thing that has two slots in it, and this flashlight has the three settings: low, medium, high, and then you can put this on it, and I really do like this. I was looking for something outside the other night, and when you put this on top of it, um, it basically lights up the whole area all the way around instead of just of a beam of light. And of course it does have the low, medium, and high. That's very low. You can't see it in the light, but medium and then high. Or you can use it just as a regular flashlight. Really cool light, and they're made very, very well. The T10, I think you'll like it. Awesome idea. It makes it like a lantern, basically. Nice. Today's guest, his name is Phill, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, but he's got some Bigfoot stories for you, and they're quite interesting. So, hope you enjoy. Okay, Phill, if you would, I'd like for you to introduce yourself, and then we will get into your stories, please.
Well, Mr. Brenton, obviously, my name's Phill. I was born and raised up till the age of 13 in northeastern Montana. We're cattle ranchers up there. Spend a lot of time in the woods. We hunt for a living. We don't really eat the beef too much. I moved down to California, had some interesting experiences there, and that's all I could think of for an introduction.
Well, I know that when you contacted me, you had mentioned shooting one of these creatures. Where'd that happen?
That happened on the northeast Montana property, which is our biggest cattle ranch, and yeah, that was definitely an interesting one. So to kind of put it into perspective, we're right up almost on the Canadian border, and it's hilly, mountain, rocky country, high pines, and you know, if you, let's say you're looking off our back porch or you're driving along a country road, whether you look left or right, you're going to see hills. You're going to see a little bit of open prairie, not a whole lot. And then you're going to see some little bit bigger mountains tucked back up towards Canada that are pretty rocky, a lot of shale. And, you know, sparse pines in between and plenty of sage. And there's a lot of cut banks and, a lot of people call them washes down in that area. And, I mean, I knew the area pretty well. You know, I'd only really vary from the house when I was that young. Maybe I'd ride maybe 30 minutes out and then stop and hunt and everything else. We have a plethora of game up there. We're not so heavy on the antelope up north. We do have a lot of elk, and every now and then a moose will make his way down. We have plenty of deer and grouse and everything like that.
Right.
So, and we're sitting on 2,400 acres, and it's a big area. And, you know, a lot of the area is unused due to the terrain. It's just not easy on the cows, not easy on us to go out and find the cows. And so mostly that's our hunting area. And there's this, 30 acre area, I think, somewhere around there, that we have a big map in the house of a ranch. And it's blown up, and you can see all the topography on it. And you know, there's this area that was marked out in, I think, black and red on the map. And I remember my granddaddy, who was an old Swede, he told me, he says, "You're never going to go there. You understand me? I don't care how old you are. I don't care who you are. You do not go there." And being 13, I wasn't the brightest in the world, and I decided to be a little rebellious. And the next morning, I decided, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna load up my horse, threw the saddle on, threw my pack saddles on, grabbed my rifle, and always had my pistol with me. And grabbed up my dog and said, okay, well, we're gonna go. And it was a pretty good ride out there. I had figured for an overnight trip, and I had packed for it. And I'd say it was probably about 1:30 in the afternoon when I got there. And we had seen a few bears on the way in. We really weren't too worried about it. One big grizz and a real young black bear. And when I riding up into there, something didn't feel right once I got about 20 minutes out from the area. I think it was mostly then I was more worried that, okay, I'm going to get in here, I'm going to get turned around, I'm not going to know where I'm going, blah, blah, blah. It's a new area to me. And, we got there. I found a nice spot with a wash right next to us, and then a hill that crests up to a ridge line. And I was right at the bottom of that ridge line. I was out of the wind, and if the rain came in, I wasn't going to get washed out. And I set up my camp, just a flight of tarp over me with a hammock underneath, set up a little fire pit, got the horse hobbled, got the saddle put back, brushed off the horse, hung my food sack, grabbed my gun, and decided, okay, well, let's go up on this ridgeline, see if we can't spot something, early in the little expedition here. And so me and the dog went up, and the whole time the dog was uneasy. And this is he wasn't young, but he wasn't old either. He was 160, 170 pound Norwegian elk hound. Now, Norwegian elk hounds are big animals. He stands to, I'm 5'10", he stands to my hips this day on all fours. And they're used for taking down full-grown moose in Norway. And all they want really at the end is a scrap fur to play with. But these dogs, I have seen our dogs take after full-grown grizz. I've seen it with grizzly bears. I've seen them take after deer and not care. They're dogs that do not care if they get hurt, but they are some of the most loyal animals I have ever met. And they protected my little cousin from a very young black bear who was really just being inquisitive and wanted to get in the trash can. But my cousin was out playing, and that dog just took after this bear and whacked him right in the side and knocked this bear over and started tearing into him. But anyways, so we're going up this ridge, and this dog was pulling at my leg, at my wranglers, my down by my ankles, whining, not wanting me to go. Finally, we got up to the top. I started glassing around and everything, and I hear a little bit of stomping down from camp, and I'm wondering, is the horse doing stupid things? What's going on down there? And heard a whinny, and say, okay. I just kind of watched down by the camp, and that dog just took off towards camp. And I'm saying, okay, well, there's a bear down there. He's going to find him. I start making my way down there about as fast as I go. And sure enough, that big dog just comes running back, whining and yowling, and then pulling at my leg again not to go down there. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm kind of fighting a cold these days. Anyways, now the rifle I carry is my granddaddy's. It's a big 300 Weatherby. It's a gun that'll take down elk. It's taken down moose for me, and it'll put a hurting on just about anything. And when I got down to camp, I got my horse settled down, and he was hobbled. He's not going to go too far, and he was wild-eyed and freaking out, kicking at me. And finally got him back to where his little pen was. And I start looking around camp, and I have a rope just set off on a ridge, on like a straight line between two trees. I got my saddle hung on it. I had my food sack up in a tree. My saddle was knocked and thrown a good ways away, not too far, but a few yards. And I look up, and my food sack's gone, and the rope is just. It looked like if you take a real not strong piece of string and pull it and it breaks. It's got those frays. Well, it looked like that about a foot from where I tied the sack. And I was thinking, good God, what the hell got a hold of this thing that can break this rope? You know, it's 550 cord. It's not light stuff. And you know, I start walking over towards where my tarp is flying, and I get this stench, and I'm wondering what it is. It's musky. It's almost like if you shoot a real old boar pig, and you know, we got the big Russians up there, and those things will stink to high heaven if you accidentally hit a gland. And it was just bad. And I'm thinking, you know, a pig ain't going to do this. There's no way a pig is going to get a food sack out of a tree. And you know, I said, okay, well, I'm not going to be too worried about it. I kind of policed up camp a little bit and decided I'm going to stay here a while, and you know, I might as well stay the night. And okay, and you know, I got a fire lit and got a little something to eat. And about that time, you know, it was getting into be the early evening. It was probably maybe 5, 6 o'clock then. And I just kind of hung around camp, and nothing really else happened. The horse was uneasy and the dog was uneasy, but again, I thought it was just a new area. And you know, I go to sleep pretty early, thinking I'm going to get up before first light. I'm going to try to get in a position on a saddle, and just try to, you know, shoot one of these big elk that are up here, because they had to be up here. And I wake up in the middle of the night because my dog is nuzzling up at my hand. He's whining. He's nibbling on my fingers. And I was kind of whack him in the head and say, you know, what are you doing here? You know, and wake up, and finally it hits me again. That odor was back, and I was barely even awake at the point, and I wasn't really processing what was going along. And I look up to my right, which is at the wall, which is towards the wash, and I just see a big figure silhouetted against the moon, and I'm wondering, okay, that's odd, and close my eyes, and I wake up again and go, okay, what the fuck? Pardon my French. And I had my rifle right next to me. My rifle was already loaded. Excuse me again. And then my .357 pistol. And, you know, I'm still trying to process it, and at one point I yelled, I said, "Get out of here, you big fucker!" And the dog at that time just started barking mad. You know, you'd think he's a rabbit, how mad he was. And it was just, this thing let out such a deafening holler. It was so loud. It was, I've been here in the military now for, a little over 3.5 years. Being a machine gunner, my baby is a 50 cal, that big Ma Deuce. And shooting without ear protection, you go deaf for a second, your ears start ringing. And to this day, I've never had anything louder than that howl going off. And wow. It lasted a good 10, 12 seconds. And, oh man, it was bellowing deep and still ear piercing. And nothing that I could have ever heard from a human. You know, elk, if they're close, if they're bugling or close to you, they'll ring your ears if you're bow hunting, you know, or if you're just sitting a few yards away in a bush just trying to get a good shot with a camera. And, oh man, it still gives me shakes to this day, because it just scared the crap out of me, honestly. But I covered my ears and I shut my eyes, thinking, this isn't happening. This can't happen. What the hell? What does he want with me? What is this thing? And I open my eyes again because the dog is still going off. And I look up, and he starts moving towards me, and his movements were slow and steady, but he was just moving so fast. His stride was so long. And excuse me.
That's all right.
And you know, and he was a good, I'd say, 40 yards from camp when I first saw him, and he hollered, and then by the time I opened my eyes again, he couldn't have been more than 2 seconds later. And he was at least 20, 25 yards away. And
wow.
The only thing I did, or the only thing I could do at that moment that I felt, was I swung my rifle. I let off a shot, and I hit him. I had to, because he dropped down to a knee, and he just, this loud, heavy grunt, like someone hits a big, 6'5" bodybuilder in the chest with a 2x4. He felt it, and he wasn't feeling too good.
So
And
when you actually shoot at him and he drops to a knee, so you kind of are a little bit more aware that you kind of hit him at this point because you see the effect of the shot. Is that correct?
Right. And it wasn't. If you shoot let's say you're shooting ground squirrels with a 22 and you're shooting them at 20, 30 yards away, you're going to hear a definite thunk when you hit them. It's always different than a round just when it keeps going. When you're that close, you're not going to hear it because of the rifle.
Right.
Or the pistol, whatever you're shooting, maybe a 22.
Plus the ring of the ears, man. When you got something that loud, you're not going to hear the thud so much, 25, 30 yards off. So I get that, yeah. But when you pulled the trigger, you heard the loud bang of the rifle, and then you see him drop. So everything's making sense according to what you're doing. Right.
Okay. It wasn't an instant effect. Pretty instant. I'd say about a half a second before his knee hit the ground and he grunted. And I swung my legs out of my little hammock, and cattleman. Well, we call it cattleman law. Even if you're sleeping, you hold your pistol. That's how it is. The way my granddaddy always taught me and everything else. And I swung up. I just dropped my rifle and stepped on it when I moved out of the hammock. I pumped 3 rounds into him with that 357, and I know at least one of them hit because I saw his arm move back real fast. And the other 2, I couldn't tell you. It was dark, and I was just pulling so fast I didn't know what was going on. But he took off right after that. About that 3rd shot, he was on his feet and moving away from me. He was moving into that wash, and I've seen elk run. I've seen antelope run. I've seen bear run in the middle of the night, everything when you're close to them. And this thing, it was maybe not 10 strides, and he was gone into the tules. And I'm standing there just wide-eyed and freaking out. Well, what the hell was that? And trying to make sense of it in my head, I was thinking, was it a big grizzly that was on his back 2 legs? And it's like, no, he wouldn't have taken a knee. They don't take a knee. They just got down on all 4s and came at me or ran off. And it wasn't processing at the time. I didn't know enough about the big guy I call him the big guy, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever people like to call him. But and even to this day, I can replay it in my head, and it's just like, what the hell was going through his mind to come up into a camp with a fire going, a big dog, and he knows I have firearms? Because through my experiences, they are intelligent. There is no way that they're not, because they know what firearms are. They know what knives are. They know what our vehicles are, and they happen to know what fire is. They'll see a wildfire and they'll probably think the same thing in our camp.
Well, and I think a lot of times they're used to being stealthy. They're used to striking fear into the people.
Right.
And I think that they're also kind of used to the people not shooting. And I think they're kind of used to, really, more than anything, I think that they're kind of used to not being seen. Even though the moon was behind it or what have you, it was silhouetting, and typically if they stand still, they can be really close and you not see them. So they have gotten extremely used to being able to be stealthy enough to where you're not going to see them. But when it roared at you, I think that they also know the ability that they have to freeze you in fear with I think they use infrasound, and they're used to being able to, whatever they roar at, it stops it in their tracks. Whether it's a deer, whether it's a rabbit, whether it's a person or whatever, you freeze. Right. And it buys them time to decide what they're going to do. And they ran across a person who didn't react the same, and that was you.
Right. Now,
And, I'll ask. Next week, I'm supposed to have Bigfoot Outlaws on, Barracuda
mhm.
and Matt, and I'll bring this case up and ask why. See what they say, because those guys usually have a good logical explanation, and my explanation is that it took a chance based upon what typically happens, but with you it didn't happen that way.
Right.
You were
Right. Now,
different.
maybe,
You were different, dude.
yeah. I mean, maybe he just decided he's going to stumble on the wrong kid out there that's just a little bit too ornery for him.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I grew up with 2 sisters and 3 brothers, and they're all over 6 foot, and I'm the baby, and I'm 5'10". So you grow up mean pretty quick. But yeah, I honestly have no idea, and it just the amount of terror that big old hauler put into me, because I don't know whether to call it a howl, a scream, a holler, whatever. It was loud, whatever it was, and it still terrifies me to this day. And I've heard it several different times, and it's like, yep, okay, well, we're gonna go the other way now.
Yeah.
And oh man, that still sends shivers.
So you shot, and you pretty much know that you hit it
Right.
once with the big gun,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
then
So
a couple of times with the other 357, and
right.
maybe once or who knows, but you think you hit
Yeah.
it at least once with that.
Yeah.
And
I
what happened from there on what you knew happened with the creature?
So when he took off, he took off into that wash, and I heard nothing. I didn't hear a branch snap. I didn't hear movement. I didn't hear panting. I didn't hear breathing. Never a holler. Nothing. And that was pretty early in the morning. I'd say that was maybe 2, 3 in the morning when that happened.
Right.
And so I was already not in the right mind. I mean, he woke me up after a few hours of sleep and no coffee. So, I sat up till daybreak. I was watching my horse. I had my dog just glued to my side. I had that fire up so high I was afraid I was going to catch the pine tree on fire that was next to it. And I had my tarp down so I could see everything. I left my flashlights off so I could try to catch any kind of movement I could. It was just sitting there scared to death as a 13-year-old kid thinking, well, looks like I ain't coming home to mom tonight, and
So you were only 13 when this happened.
right.
Okay, how old are you now?
21.
21. Okay. So
Yep.
okay, so this was back before you ever had your military experience, right?
Right.
For sure.
Right.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you were 13.
Yeah.
Wow, what a brave kid, dude. I mean, goodness. I bet you made a hell of a Marine.
I tried.
For real, man.
When I came into the Marine Corps, I was, through boot camp, I was gung ho. I was all about it. I was the guide, which is in charge of the platoon. The recruit in charge of the platoon. You really don't have any power in boot camp. I was a squad leader when I went to SOI, which is the School of Infantry, where you learn all your infantry skills. And then once common skills ended, I was immediately put into a squad leader position when I went to weapons platoon to train on machine guns, which is what I am now. I'm an 0331 machine gunner. And even when I got here as a young Marine, a young PFC, I worked hard. I'm meaner than hell. And I made team leader within 6 months of being in the fleet. And then I picked up Lance, stayed team leader, and then I picked up corporal, but I kind of got a little stupid and got that taken away from me.
Do you think it was your experience of being able to go out there and brave it alone as a 13-year-old kid? You're willing to go out there on a horse, taking the dog, taking guns, and you're going out there on an adventure. on a mission to do whatever the mission is, do you
Right.
think that helped you as a Marine at least have some kind of gumption to go out there and complete a mission?
I do. My granddaddy, my dad was, my biological father was pretty worthless. My mother is a 5'10", or not, sorry, 5'10", 5 foot nothing, tiny little woman. She's been sick with leukemia for 10 years. Ornery than hell. Nicest lady in the world until you piss her off. But she's ornery. And, everybody in the family were just ornery people, not people that like to mess with. And my granddaddy was that for sure. He'd bring us out of bed in the morning at 4 in the morning, say, all right, go to work at noon, come back, get something to eat. And he'd say, all right, well, it's time for one of you to toughen up. And we'd end up boxing a 6'2" Swede. And, we'd lose, but he wouldn't beat us too bad. But then, we would be encouraged by my granddaddy. He'd say, you know what, if you get all your work done this week and you work hard enough, you can have 2 days off. You can go out and you can do whatever you want, but I don't want to see it. And it's like, oh, well, what is there to do? Okay, well, I'm going to go hunting. And as kids, sometimes it'd be me and my brother, sometimes it'd be just me, sometimes it'd be me and my sister. We'd go out in the mountains and we'd go hunt for 2-3 days at a time.
Right.
And I've been doing that since, I'd say I was about 7, going out on my own. I had to have some, the family would make me take someone before that, but when I was about 7, I was allowed to start venturing out on my own and start doing my own thing. And then I was allowed to go farther and farther as long as I was able to carry the gun, well, not carry it, but able to shoot, a bigger caliber gun, because we do have a lot of grizzly problems up there, and we do have wolf problems up there. And I've got plenty of experience with both of those, let me tell you. And, you always have a dog with you as a form of safety. And, and it's a self-sufficient lifestyle up there. We're 3 hours from the nearest town. If we don't go out and kill something to eat, that means we have to kill a cow and burn money. And it's bad for business for us. So I do believe that being able to saddle up, buck up, and get out there and do things on your own, hunt on your own, do all the work on your own, and just be out there into what you would think is the unknown as a young kid, and be able to handle it. And I do believe that helped me out on my first deployment in Afghanistan, because there was a few times that it was just me and a couple of guys that I was in charge of in a fob. And granted, that we had several other squads and they're with us, just taking care of this fob. But when it comes down and the bullets start flying, it's you and your guys, and you're taking control of them, and you're just trying to take orders as best you can and get the job done.
Hey man, I'd rather come into contact with some Afghanis than Sasquatch. Believe that.
I am with you 100%.
It could depend, I guess. An Afghani with a rocket launcher or something, maybe. But you know what I mean. You did good. You did fine, and it sounded like you were from a young age getting some bravery built up, and some responsibility for your maintaining your own not just self, but you were supposed to be responsible for whatever you were doing, and it sounds like that's what the deal was. Now from this experience that you had there when you were young, you had other contacts with Bigfoot later, didn't you?
Several, yeah. I had 1 or 2 more in Montana. I'm sorry. There was, let me think. There was 3. And then there's been, I'd say, a good handful in California. I'd say at least 4 or 5 in Northern California. And then, of course, I've had 2 down here in North Carolina, and in some of the swamps that we have down here. But I can't really explain those too well. I didn't really know what was going on. I was a little inebriated at that point. But anyhow, to get back to the original story, the part that I find most interesting is I believe I did. I sent you a couple pictures the blood trails that I took with this stupid little camera that I had.
Right.
And you know, when daybreak hit, me and the dog got up, and you know, it's like, okay, well, he's still uneasy. I still scared to death. And I said, all right, well, let's go find this critter because he's got to be dead. A 300 Weatherby is not around to play with. It'll take, you can shoot an elk in one shoulder and the other shoulder can come off. And so we started moving down this wash, and there's some tracks, and it looked like he was almost dragging a leg. There was he was walking in almost a little bit of a shuffle with a long drag on his left leg. And I was thinking, okay, well, maybe I hit him in the hip, maybe I hit him in the thigh, but he went to a knee, so it had to be upper leg somewhere to make that leg want to give out like that, maybe in the torso. And I put my dog on the trail, and he hated it. He did not want to be around it. He kept whining. He kept looking at me like, Dad, why are you doing this? You know, and I just kept putting his nose to the trail, and he kept following it. We'd see little drops of blood, and then we'd see a big spill, and then we'd follow a little bit more. We'd see a little bit on the tules. And once we got out of the tules, we got up to this fallen pine, and it's just like someone opened up a bag of blood and just let it go on this pine for at least, I'd say, a good 4 feet. And it wasn't all in one line, obviously. It was a good amount of splatter here and there. I couldn't really make out a handprint or a footprint if there was one. And it was decently fresh. It hadn't dried yet, but the dew was still on the log from the night before. And we start moving up the hill into the higher pines, and it gets a little sparse up towards the top. And looking around in the sage, and then I look down and I see 2 decent-sized rocks and a smaller one, right next to each other, and just a long drag mark. And you couldn't really make out to where if it had been dragging his leg or something like that, but it was a good spill of blood and kept an indication of the direction. And we followed that trail before the blood trail let out for about 2 miles and never found a carcass. And I think that scared me more than anything, because, I mean, you shoot some of the 300 Weatherby, whether it be an elk or a moose, eventually it's going to die if you get a decent shot on it. And the amount of blood that was on the ground, I could have swore it would have bled out by then.
Yeah, well, you were tracking a creature you thought died.
Right.
And it very well may have, but that doesn't mean that's what's taking the creature out.
Yeah.
I mean, typically when you find a Sasquatch around, there's more. So they could have very well been carrying it out.
Right. And I'm a firm believer in that they bury or take care of their dead. There has to be a reason why we don't find a carcass. There has to be a reason that we don't find the bones.
Yeah, eventually. And I mean, at the time, though, I mean, you would only be thinking, hey, I need to find this creature that would have been dead. Now,
right.
Because you wouldn't have been thinking about something carrying it out. I get that. But now when reflecting back, you might also sit and think, oh, this thing probably did go off and was making its way out, but at some point something else picked it up, and he probably made some calls to his fellows, and might even have been calls that were not even in your hearing range. You know what I'm saying? And,
right.
And they would have came and assisted it, and therefore you. But yeah, I saw the pictures, and it looked like big splatters that were odd looking for a blood trail. I mean, it just huge release all of a sudden.
Right. If you look at it, so I in the Marine Corps here, using the knowledge that I've gained in the Marine Corps, I went to CLS, which is Combat Lifesaver, and that's a basic course that most Marines go to, and that's, okay, your buddy got hit, you put a tourniquet on him, or you patch him up, this is how you do it. And then I went to TCCC, which is a little bit more advanced. And as inhumane as people may make it sound, it's a great teaching tool. We use young pigs, and they stopped this, I think, 2 years back. But when I took it, they numb a pig up, they cut it open, and then it's femoral artery. They take it and they cut it, and they say fix it, and you have to stop an arterial bleed. Now, with an arterial bleed, it is bright blood and it's squirting, and there's a lot of it, and that's what I was seeing from these pictures. But what I wasn't understanding is why it wasn't a constant thing. And seeing it more often along the trail. With an arterial bleed, it's quick because it's just pushing blood through that artery. And I don't know if I couldn't have hit him in the femoral, and I obviously don't know their anatomy, but I guess it's much like ours, that it maybe that there is an artery in the torso, or maybe it was a pistol shot. I got an artery in the arm that he was able to keep pressed to him and keep pressure on and keep that artery from squirting everywhere, and just it would have slowly leaked blood with the pressure regardless. And that was the trail I was seeing.
Right. Yeah, it's a mystery. Because when I was looking at the pictures, I thought, wow, those were big splats. So, right. It couldn't have been just continuing to run with that kind of blood trail.
Right.
It would have dropped fairly quick, So, it made me think it had assistance, or it knew something about its own wound that was dealing with its own wound somehow. And what I thought when I saw the two rocks, I thought maybe it had done a procedure on itself, and the rocks were involved with that.
Yeah, I honestly I couldn't tell you anything on that, but the assistance would definitely make sense. But if they have their own medical or medicinal process that they run through, it has to be fairly advanced to ours. Well, it's not as advanced to ours. It's not. Well, it could be actually, but it has to be pretty up there, because to get an arterial bleed to stop is not an easy thing. It's a very tricky thing. If you slip once, there goes your patient. And it's still mind-boggling to me. And
I'm serious. Whenever the deal with the rocks,
mm-hmm.
seemed like to me that some kind of procedure took place in that spot.
Right. And
did it not come off like that to you? It seemed like something honestly happened that rocks were involved. I don't know what they did. I'm not sure. I'm just saying it seemed like there was a procedure that happened in that spot.
Honestly, I never thought of that. I would never think of using a rock as some kind of procedural device. Now, I'm looking at the picture currently, and I don't know if you are or not, but if you look at there's the bigger rock on the left, and then there's a small one all the way to the right, and then the one in the middle. Yeah. I'm looking in between the two big rocks. Okay. But I'm looking in between the two big rocks, and I'm seeing a decent amount of blood in there. And I'm seeing a pretty consistent, on the left side of the middle rock, I am seeing, except for one little spot, I'm seeing it for a pretty consistent layer of blood on that rock.
Yeah. Now, what was the first thing you came in line with was probably the other picture, right?
I'm sorry. Yeah, the pine.
Okay. Now, it seemed like to me that they stopped here, and whether those rocks were used, I don't know. But it seemed like something happened here that gave that spurt and a look, something that was it just came off to me by the pictures that you showed with the other one and this one here, that
Right.
somehow or another these rocks were busted because the blood is on this in such a weird way that it seemed like there was something stopped here, and they did something to stop that amount of bleeding.
Right.
And
Right.
of course they run fast too, so
Oh God, yeah.
stopping might produce that amount of blood, but it looks like the blood is on those rocks too much. It wasn't
Yeah.
just stopping. Those rocks were involved in something.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Because it smeared
I can't
into the
place.
big ones.
Right. I can't place anything definitively, but you do make a very good point. And I haven't really studied these images too much. I haven't really looked into them as closely as I would have wanted to, or actually as I should have. But even looking at the pine, it was decently fresh blood, and you're seeing, like, I'm seeing dry spurts on it and stuff like that. I'm seeing, big, not globs, but, a decent amount in about the center. And then on the far end of the log, I'm seeing what almost looks like a smear.
Yeah, let me go back to that one. Yeah, and it looked like okay, here it comes to this. Now the splatter, the splash goes to the left. So
Yeah.
the blood was slung at it, you know what I'm saying? Because the drips go, to me it looks like the blood was coming from, when you're looking at the picture from the right, hitting it at a little bit of a, what would you call it, a trajectory, there's something squirting out, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
So,
Something with force going
yeah,
into another direction.
and there's way too much, and because at the end of that log, it's smeared.
Mm-hmm.
So it had stopped and smeared along that. Somehow something was, whether it was its leg or what, it was dropping blood on this log, but seemingly the blood is being thrown from a right to left to
Mm-hmm.
splatter it over, because there seems to be a splatter pattern of it hitting and going to the left.
Right.
And then when on up it seems to be something wiping along this that filled in the whole big swath, but still with some splatter a little bit when you look at it up close.
Right.
So it was that means that it seemingly it was had something already going on with stopping the bleeding. It was relieved at the first aspect of this log. It splattered out when it took the tourniquet off or whatever it was doing, and it wiped it somehow, or there was a wipe going on up the log because it
Right.
filled in the whole big red swath, because that's smeared. That's not just splatter.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
smears.
It's much lighter and spread out compared to the rest.
Yeah, and plus it's smeared.
Yeah.
That's a rub. That's something bloody rubbing on it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it stopped there and continued with a procedure. It was trying to get the blood to. It was doctoring itself on this on the trail. There was
Yeah.
too much blood of a blood leak, and then there was it wiped it somewhere down through here. So what it looks like to me is it took a tourniquet off or something.
Right.
Free flow splatter happened where it's the real red spot. It wiped something or another, continued down the trail, and then the next place you saw was the rocks.
Right. And
It
now
did
these
another
were
procedure there.
right. These were 3/4 of a mile apart.
Right,
These
yeah.
were a good ways apart.
But a
And
Sasquatch can cover that in no time. That's
Yeah, I
amazing.
know. I know that now, and from seeing them run that the night or the early morning before. But these have been really controversial with the people that I know, my friends and such. They say, oh yeah, you probably just shot an elk and took the pictures and blah 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, okay, man, you can think what you want, but I was there.
Now,
I
now, do
remember
you have these pictures copyrighted?
no.
No. Okay.
Wait, you can
It's
copyright pictures?
Yeah, you can. It
Oh,
seemed like there was one of the pictures I was looking at. It might not be yours, but it seemed like I saw something in the picture that was a copyright type stamp. I'm not sure, but I don't see it now. So
okay.
you're telling me these are your pictures for sure.
Yes.
Okay, so I can
Yeah.
use this picture in the video.
If you like, yeah.
Okay,
I've
yeah. I
emailed
mean, I
this.
will. I don't like to talk about stuff and not show it. So,
Right,
but
right. That's
it
understandable.
seems like to me that you were tracking one, and it was doing something to try to stop from dying. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, it
Yeah,
knew it was bleeding out. You shot it with a Weatherby, dude. This
yeah.
thing knew it was screwed.
It is a big round.
Yeah, it was like,
Uh,
oh crap, I done messed up. And then it got shot again with 357. And that ain't no chump round either.
yeah.
357 will do it too. But I'm sure it knew when the shock probably set in on the first deal. But yeah, dude, they may have saved its life, but I bet it had to have gotten assistance.
Yeah, it was hurting. I can tell you that. It was not in a good way. I mean, I've yet to see even a halfway decently gut shot animal survive for very long after being shot with that caliber.
Right.
I mean, it's such a big round. There's so much force going into it, and it just messes everything up in its way.
Yeah.
And yeah,
On the second
but
picture, that just doesn't look like a blood splatter, completely blood splatter. It looks like, to me, it seems like it was a big release where it stopped again, and something took place here, and it looks like a tooth in the. Do you see that
I don't.
by the bottom of the rock, the middle rock? Do you see the little white pointy thing?
So you're saying from the
Yes.
middle rock, is it
Yeah, there's a white thing right there. It looks like a tooth.
kind of? It almost looks like it's glowing and popping out at you. Is that
Yeah,
the one you're talking about?
the middle rock. There's a one, two, three kind of big rocks
Yeah.
across the screen. The middle rock, kind of a little bit, 3/4 way across the big rock in the middle. If you
Hmm.
go down just a tad, there seems to be a tooth right there.
Right.
The white
If you
thing.
look, yeah, yeah, I see what you're talking about. I honestly don't think it's a tooth.
Okay,
I think
well, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I don't know.
maybe. I can't tell you for sure because I haven't studied these critters. What I know about them is very faint compared to a lot of people. Um, it almost looks like the only other thing I could think of is quartz, but we don't have quartz in that area. Well, we have it, but it's not a very common occurrence. And
Well, it could be something else. I don't know, but it kind of looks like a tooth, and
right,
it kind of makes. I was wondering if there was um, maybe if it had bit down on something. I don't know, but it looks kind of
yeah,
like a canine type tooth, and the brown part is the uh, root area that was under the gum, basically. Somehow or another, that
right,
maybe was biting down on something while they did whatever, and that tooth was left behind. I mean, that's just a theory, man. I'm just guessing,
Right.
but it
Yeah,
kind of
I'm
looks
looking at it.
flute-like, and
It
more than one. in
it
the,
does, but I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong one. I was looking at almost to the left of what you're looking at. There's a real bright white instead of a more yellow cream, which I think that's what you're talking about. That I believe is to be a leaf, because if you look to the right of the screen, low right to the smaller rock, there's another leaf that looks like it is just angled in a different way, and that would have.
you may be right. You may be right.
Yeah,
But that
yeah,
one
but
up there by the rock, though,
yeah,
kind of looks the shape of a canine. I would just hey, that's just a theory on if it was biting on something, they did something, you know what I'm saying?
right.
It
I understand what
looked
you're
like a
saying.
tooth in the picture, in the scenario that, I could see a scenario like that. But yeah, you're right. There is another one kind of off to the left that looks the same color, and that looks more leaf-like. So yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Shot that theory down. That probably ain't it. But
Well, who knows?
it's called mysteries to search. We got to search them
Yeah.
out. You prove them wrong, that's fine.
Yeah.
But there's something that happened there. That's not a normal blood splatter, because it's
Right.
smeared blood almost. You know what I mean? It's almost like blood splatter that goes out from the bottom of the picture up, like a
Right.
big splat. That's a lot of blood lost right there, real quick.
Yeah.
In the splatter, where you see on the rock to the right, where you get 3 rocks there, across the picture, the splatter pattern goes as if the blood is going forward. It hits and it splatters up. You know what I mean? Because they got little arms coming off the blood.
Right.
But there's
Right.
a lot of smear on that, on the rock. So it made me think that there was something happened there. They did something, like
Right.
whether
Yeah.
they were doing a tourniquet, something, with a vine, or who knows,
Mm-hmm. Well,
something stopped right there, redid the tourniquet or something. I don't know.
yeah. Well, thinking back to what you were saying, I mean, from my knowledge of tourniquets, and they are a pain to put on by yourself. Like, we're taught self-aid. Everybody, pretty much everybody can put a tourniquet on by yourself. But when I'm sure, just like every other mammal critter in this world, they had to have had adrenaline going, and you're fumbling. You're not in the right state of mind. You're not thinking clearly. You're not able to act clearly. So I think you're right with the assistance part, because there are multiple up there on that ranch. I know there are. I've
Right,
seen 2 different individuals.
right. And it would take a
So, and
minute to get assistance if you're out by yourself. You make a call to your fellows. When I
all
talk
right.
about the stuff in the Bible about what I think Sasquatch is,
Mm-hmm.
because the word Seder in the scriptures, in the Hebrew scriptures, means hairy. So I'm
Right.
and the Seder lives out away from people in the wilderness and what have you, where
Mm-hmm.
people aren't. And basically, Seder means hairy. And one of the things it says about the Seder is it calls to his fellows. And when
Okay.
you go out Bigfoot hunting, what do? And they make Bigfoot calls to, acting like they're calling to other Bigfoot. So,
Right. Well,
I mean, to me, I was just suggesting, hey, man, a
yeah.
word in the Bible that means hairy, that lives out away from people, and they call to each other. I mean, dude, that's pretty close to what we see with this Bigfoot thing. So,
Yeah. Just about dead on.
it is, man. And they're giants, and with the
Yeah.
Nephilim and the Raphaim and all that kind of stuff. They could be killed because Israel killed them all the time. They hunted them down
Right.
and killed them. I mean, the most famous Nephilim story really is David and Goliath. Goliath
Mm-hmm.
was a Nephilim. He was killed. David killed him with a slingshot.
Right.
But
Well, I need to start carrying a slingshot then. See, that's where all the Bigfoot hunters going wrong. They're trying to kill them. They need a slingshot.
that was a miracle too. So don't plan. The
Yeah.
weather would be better. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I got a new 338 Lapua, so we'll see how they like that next time.
Yeah. Hey, but anyway, you had other encounters. Let's move on to your next one.
I did. So a few years later, so after 13, well, I'd say late into my 13th year on this world, and we moved down to California. My granddaddy had bought a ranch down there for rodeo, and we were bouncing back and forth between the rodeo ranch and Montana, just doing work where it needed to be done. I was trying to learn the way of the business from everything, and I decided, okay, well, mule deer season just started up. I'm going to go out and shoot a muley. I'm tired of shooting these California deer. I want to go shoot something with some meat on its bones. So, again, I have my dog and my horse, and the same rifle, same pistol, just the same little get up. Just about a year or so later, and I make my way out of the house early in the morning. It's not even light out yet, and I get out into this area where it's hills and sagebrush and some rock, not anywhere near the area where the first encounter happened, but it's maybe a mile from the house, and I'm looking up, going up towards the mountains, and there's this big ridge line that connects two mountains, and it's going up at a pretty steep angle, and I'm glassing on it, trying to see if there's any antlers that are going to silhouette, because there's a little, it's like a little spring. It's a small pool at the bottom of this ridge where we've seen a lot of mule deer and a couple whitetail and some elk come down and drink from there in the morning, afternoon, whenever they get thirsty. And, I watch this ridge line looking for antlers to pop up and scanning everything else, and I see something round bobbing through my binoculars, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, what the hell is that? It's a big doe. And I didn't see any ears, and it was like, okay. And so I move my bipod, and so I'm a little more comfortable and just watching. And lo and behold, it goes from a dome to a head, real short neck, and then just massive shoulders. And then I see an arm moving, and then a torso, and then before I know it, about a quarter way up this ridge line is the big man again. And he's just trotting along and walking at his normal pace, which is a sprint for me. And just walking along, I watched him for him to get from where he was, I'd say about 300 yards, only took maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And that's with him stopping and looking around. And he stopped and he knelt down, and he was doing something up there. I couldn't really make it out. And then I remember seeing him look just dead at me. And all I can do is sit there and stare. And he stood up. He just went from broadside to just chest towards me and looked at me for a second, turned, kept walking up the ridge line, and every 6 or 7 steps he'd look at me. And then a little later down the line, he'd stop again, go full chest, and look at me. And then he moved up onto the hill, onto the big hill, into the trees, and I just heard that damn howl again, and said, "Okay, well, it's time to pack up." And we got out of there pretty quick. And again, my dog was uneasy, and this time, I knew it. I knew it was up there, and I wasn't too happy about it either. So just being able to watch and glass and get a feel for how quick they can move from when he's walking, just to imagine how fast they can move when he can run, it's baffling to me, and it still is.
Notice it gave us howl when it got in the woods. It's like, man, I'll wait, before I do that. Know what happened to my buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was, I mean, good God, I was glassing at least a mile. He was at least a mile and a half away on that ridge line, and I have no idea how he saw me. I really don't, because I was sitting in the sage, just a little above the sagebrush. I was camoed out, and the wind was in my face, and yeah, somehow he knew I was there.
Yeah.
Because a critter doesn't look and then move and then keep looking, just looking dead into your eyes every time. It doesn't happen if they don't know that you're not there. If they don't know that you're there.
Oh, I think that they can see good. I think they can hear good, they can smell good, and they can see really good.
Right. I do believe that too, because I maybe would have caught a little movement and maybe a tiny silhouette with the naked eye, but yeah, I mean, for him to see me among the brush in camo, it's baffling.
Right.
And he wasn't as big as, he was a little bit shorter than what I had imagined the one, because I'm not getting a really good look and not being able to gauge the heights very well of the first one. To me, he looked a little bit shorter. He looked maybe 6'8", 6'6", somewhere in there, and just muscled. He looked like a bodybuilder almost, and the way his shoulders didn't move. His shoulders seemed locked in place, and it was just muscle from there, and it was insane. I've never seen that big of any kind of hominid in my life, even in people. He was massive. It's like a big German coming after you or something.
Was it the typical color, the brownish black, or reddish kind of color with the sagittal crest head, cone head? Mm-hmm. Was it that type?
Right, it was. It did have a slight cone, though not much more than a human. It was just the size of it. It obviously wasn't a person to me. But at a distance, everything looks darker. You can put, an orange cat out at 100 yards, and it's going to look darker than it does 10 yards from you.
Right.
And to my knowledge, I'd say, brown, brunette, black, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And he obviously wasn't some kind of albino out there trying to do the same thing I was doing in glass for game. But, yeah. And, again, once I heard that howl, I took off, or that holler, I took off. And, the next encounter, I was home alone, and my mom, my granddad, and all the elders and the ranch hands were off for a couple weeks for Christmas, and they had all gone home and stuff. And it was just me at the house. And I decided, you know what? Okay, I'm going to go out coyote hunting tonight, and we got a few milling around the house. And so I went out and I sat up on a fence, which is maybe 100 yards from the back door of the house, and my dog was with me as usual, and all I had was my little 22 250 rifle. It's a great little coyote round. And I'm sitting there watching. It's real bright out. It's a full moon. You can have great vision out there in a full moon. It's what's called big sky country. It just lights up the area. And I heard that howl again coming from the tree line, which is maybe a half mile from the house. And the first thing I thought was, oh, my God, this is it. He's coming for me this time. I'm not getting away. I hightailed it to the house. The dog was just right behind me. And I sat at the back door. At the front of the house, it just looks like open prairie. And with binoculars, you can see the road. And there's a few hills in there. But I sat at that back door with my 300 Weatherby, waiting for something to come in and beat down my door. And I remember hearing banging in the barn, like almost like a cow was kicking the side of the barn. And then we have some smaller pines, maybe a foot and a half around. Thick, excuse me, not around. Just to the right of the house. And I heard tree knocking. And that was the first I had ever experienced that. And then after that, I had looked into it and realized it was a form of communication. And it was just so loud. I've never heard anyone hit a tree that hard before, except for maybe a truck crashing into it, but it wouldn't be the same sound, wood on wood. And I heard tree knocking from the other side of the house on the other small pond. And the banging in the barn was still going on. So I said, okay, the hell with this. If he's coming for me, he's coming for me. And I walked out to 300 Weatherby, put 2 rounds in the air, and it stopped. And I stood there, and I waited, and I watched, and I turned on the spotlight, and I'm scanning from left to right, just looking for anything. And then I hear one more knock, and I put a round in that direction, and that was all I heard for the rest of the night. And I was 14 and a half then, because that was only about 8 months. No, I'm sorry. I was a little older than that. Yeah, because it was about 8 months after glassing and watching them.
Yeah. Well, you know what, man? I would say that any Sasquatch in your area that had been shot, they all knew about it, and they were probably thinking, it ain't worth bleeding out. We're out of here, man. That kid, he'll shoot you.
Yeah, he's a mean little one, let me tell you. He's ornery.
Steer clear. Didn't turn out
Yeah.
so, yeah. I think that if they know what a gun is, and they're not going to chance bleeding out. No.
Oh yeah, I believe they are very, very intelligent.
Yeah.
And that night when the next day when everybody got back, I asked my granddaddy. I said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute out in the barn?" And he said, "Sure." And we sat down and we talked for a good hour. And I said, "This is what's going on. This is what I've seen. This is what's happened." And he said, "Okay, I need to show you something." And so we go back into the house and we go into his office and he pulls out this big book, and it's not leather bound, but it's got it's called The Spine. The Spine. The spine of the book is like almost like stitched with leather, just a heavy rod shoved through it, and pulling leather out the other side. Very heavy, thick canvas covers, and he opens it up, and it's a log of the ranch from when my great granddaddy started it on the East Coast, started the company, and moved to the West Coast. Has all the ledgers, all the dates, everything that's happened on that ranch, from animals bought to animals killed to animals sold to hunts made to go out and get meat to the production of what we got out of that hunt, what we've seen. There's entire pages describing areas of the ranch and what to look for and how to hunt these animals, because no one had been over there except for the Native Americans in the area that knew the lay of the land, knew what was going to happen. And so it's just a book of knowledge on the ranch and the area and everything else. And he flips about a quarter of the way into it, and he says, "Okay, read that." And it's about a half a page of one of the ranch hands getting drugged from his sleeping bag in the middle of the night, about 2 feet, just so, he's just moved a little bit. And he wakes up and starts shooting in the air, and he looks around, and he said, "There is just this big monster in front of me," and he just looked at me, turned around, and walked off. And there are, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I wasn't saying nothing. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And each time I'm reading these stories, and there's a lot of them in this book, and these experiences that, it had happened before, none of them were violent. They were all what seemed to be inquisitive. And it was like, okay, what is this thing? Hey, what are you doing? You smell funny. You look funny. And there's been things stolen off the ranch that, there's nobody else around except for the ranch hands and the family. And all of a sudden, we have yokes for the cattle and horses gone. No one knows where they went.
Mm-hmm.
And then, 5-6 years later, there's an entry saying, "I found an old yoke out on top of a hill one year, and we don't know how it got there, and it was 2 miles from the house. And these, you keep reading the stories, and they're all fitting together of things that are stolen turn up forever away, or they just never turn up, or they turn up broken into pieces. And there's mentioning of tracks, there's mentioning of the howls, there's mentioning of the tree knocking, and there's mentioning of talking to one of the native tribes in the area, one of the small groups that were in the area, saying, look, you don't go in the mountains. You just don't. You leave them alone. Who's ever, they what do they call it? I'm going to have to look into it. I'll call my family back home and ask.
Can you get that journal?
I can. It's in my possession at home in my gun safe, but that's something that's very dear to the heart.
And would you be willing to share some of it?
As far as with one person or with the world?
To come on and talk about some of the stuff like you're doing now.
I would.
But don't share everything, if it's too personal or something. But when it comes to the Sasquatch stuff, it'd be very interesting for you to say, hey, this, like you're doing now, maybe with a little more detail if you had the book in front of you. That'd be freaking awesome, man. You wouldn't want to.
Yeah,
Who wouldn't want to hear that?
Yeah, I'm all up for that. Now, granted, I'm currently stationed in North Carolina, so when I get out of the Marine Corps, or actually, I'll probably just have some of my family send me photocopies of the pages. I just read some of the excerpts out of that log, and they're extremely interesting, and they all fit hand in hand, and eventually it starts building a small profile of what they are. And they're saying there is no more than a dozen that they've noticed. There are young, there are old, and they're social. They don't necessarily have a language like we do, not words or something like that, but they talk with tones, and they talk with, if they're near each other, they talk with motion, and when they're away from each other, different tones, different sounds, just any basic language of grunts and stuff like that.
Wow, that would be freaking awesome, man. If you could pull that together, dude. That would help people understand more, wouldn't it?
I do believe it would. Yeah. But, a lot of the big problems that I run into is the skeptics. And it's just...
Who cares about the skeptics, man?
It's taken me so long to come out with this. Like, I've watched your channel for a long time now, and and I'm starting to think, I was like, okay, this guy gets it. This guy understands, and then I talk to someone that I know here in the Marine Corps, and they say, okay, yeah, we're gonna go send you to medical because you need to get some help or something. It's just like, I'm telling you, dude, I was there. This wasn't, I haven't made this up. This isn't something that I play in my head to make a cool story, to impress people. And, it's been real hard for me to come out with it. I really hope this show kind of opens me up about it. So.
Yeah. And, there's lots of people that don't believe it, and that's okay. They just don't know. But there's a lot of people that do, and there's a lot of people that are learning, and I'm really excited about having the Bigfoot Outlaw guys on, and if you were to come forward and share some of the book there, I would love to hear what they even think about that. You know what I'm saying? Along with what I've gathered over time, heard lots of different things, man. One of the things I think that is really interesting is this. Sometimes the whistling, they'll like whistle, and it'll go up to a high pitch, and it'll come down and waver, and then it'll stop with some clicks, like click, 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 click. The things that they can do with their vocal mechanism that are kind of beyond what most people think that you could do with a voice box. Yeah. They don't whistle by putting their lips to a circle, and blowing through it like a human would whistle. They whistle with
Right.
their voice box. It's quite incredible.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? And they
Yeah.
mimic a lot of different things, and it's fascinating. So some of what you just said a minute ago, that intrigues me, and that kind
Right.
of that tells me that someone who has written this stuff down knows something that's true.
Right. Well, this comes from different the log and the experiences that are put into the log book.
Right,
It's from different people, but they're all
right.
localized. They're all ranch hands or family on the ranch.
Some of it
Excuse me.
rings true to me. From what I just heard
Right.
you say, some of that sounds true on things that I haven't necessarily even said before, that I've heard. You know, I mean, there's some of the things you said that match some of the things I've gathered. I don't tell everything that I've gathered. You know, I haven't had everything put out there. You know what I'm saying. And people send a lot of stuff that I never make it to air.
Right. Right.
So anyway, we're at about an hour 20ish or so. Um, Now you had more encounters when you moved. Is that correct?
Yes. So hunting in Northern California in two certain valleys that we live in one. We live in the Cape Valley, and we hunt up into the Rumsey Canyon. And then there's Bear Valley, which is it's another cattle ranch, and it's leased to hunting clubs up in that area. Now, when I met my friend Harry, we met in high school. I think I was a freshman, and he was a sophomore. And I showed up in just a cowboy get up for me, normal clothes. I'm wearing Tony Lama's old beat up boots, old beat up Wranglers, and a button up shirt with a ball cap. And he's a backwoods kid. He lived out, in the hills of California, which most people think are, oh yeah, Tom Cruise. So up there it gets pretty hairy. But and he said, okay, well, I got to meet this kid. And so we started talking. We started fishing together, and just down the road from us is Cache Creek, and we fish there, and you're catching suckerfish and carp, and every now and then a few smallmouth bass, and what do you call it? Not flathead cats, just little channel catfish, and we fished up and down this creek for years. And I think I was 17 and he was probably 18 by then. I was getting ready to go into the Marine Corps. And, we had deer hunted in these areas. We had seen weird things. We had heard weird things. And, we just kind of brushed it off, not thinking what it was. Well, there's this bridge. It's an old bridge. It's steel and concrete. This old, bent I-beams and concrete. And right underneath it's a big hole. And in the county, they say this is the best catfishing in the county. We never fished there. We had bumps for smallmouth and stuff like that. We never catfished there. So we went down one night, and we got down there maybe 9 o'clock, set up on, crossed a real thin stream that branched off. And, the creek's not very wide. It's maybe 120 feet wide, and it's not very deep either. I think at its deepest in that spot was maybe 8-9 feet. And, we're just throwing worms on the bottom and sitting on this sandbar, and he's got this little dog, and he's a German short hair cross with a fox terrier. Well, this dog and my big, Norwegian elk hound, they get along like crazy because this little dog is insane. He's taken after black bear. He's taken after bobcat. He's taken after coyotes. He just doesn't care. Doesn't seem to be afraid of anything. And we're sitting there carrying on and having a good time. And, and then we're sitting there getting pretty quiet for a few minutes, reeling on a few fish. And, I was thinking, okay, well, let's move up the creek a little bit. We're not really getting anything here. And Harry said, let's give it 10 more minutes. And I said, okay. We're sitting there. And then across the creek is this just big splash. And you can hear the sound of a rock when it hits shallow or deep water, and it hits shallow water. And it's just it sent water a good 4 to 5 feet in the air, and we're going, oh, what the hell was that? Okay, that farmer over there is probably just mad we're here. We're like, hey, we're just fishing. We're not breaking anything. And we didn't hear a response. And then not even a minute later, in the middle of the creek, just a deep honk of a big rock hitting the center of the creek in the deeper water. And we're like, okay, some kid messing with us. That's a big rock. Okay, whatever. And then one lands a little closer to Harry and sprays me and Harry. And Harry's like, what the hell? And he stands up and he puts a shot in the air with his little .32 Beretta pistol. And then it's quiet for a few minutes. And then a big one lands in the sand about 2 feet in front of me and just whook, breaks my rod. The dog is freaking out. He's hugging up next close to Harry, scared, shaking. I was like, what is going on here? And towards the bridge is to our right. It's maybe 40, 50 yards to our right. And it sounded close, maybe to the back, maybe a little farther than the bridge on the edge of the creek. We heard a scream, and it was ear-piercing, but we were far enough away that it didn't hurt. And immediately what shot through my mind was, okay, mountain lion. Wait, that doesn't sound like a mountain lion. A mountain lion sounds like a baby or a woman screaming. This was a continuous, loud scream. And the dog just cowered, got into Harry's lap, and was curled up with his nose and his face hidden into Harry, shaking and whining. And we're thinking, oh, yeah, we got to get the hell out of here. And we got up to the Jeep, and we started shining lights in the area. We couldn't see anything. We didn't hear anything else. And then we heard one big whack into the water, like someone took a 2x6 and slapped the water. And from there, we just got in the Jeep and peeled out and took off home.
Right. Wow.
So that was the first one in California, and it was interesting.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Wow.
But,
you had a lot of good ones, man, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting kind of later, so if you want to, once we come back on, and you can have like another show to share from this point to some other encounters.
That sounds great to me. If you'll have me, I'm glad to.
Yeah, man, for sure. I know that once it gets up to an hour and a half or so, it's kind of best to break it into a couple different shows, but we'll have you back on, and we'll talk about a few other little things too that we've talked about, and
okay,
and go from there. Is that cool?
That works for me. You have my contact, so again, I'm available almost any time. I haven't gotten much sleep, so.
Sounds great, man. And everybody out there in YouTube land, I hope you liked that. If you got any kind of story or encounter of any kind of cryptid or supernatural, anything you think would be a good story, contact me at brentonsawin@gmail.com. If you want to contribute to help make this channel work better, help produce these videos and what have you, you can go to a link in the description, PayPal me. You can make a contribution there, and every contribution is very much appreciated. And until next time, God bless, and we'll see you all on the next video. Bye.